Tonight, it is our honor to sit down with Mayor Scott Fadness of the City of Fishers. Mayor, thank you for being here tonight.
Glad to be here.
First of all, tell me about your travels to becoming mayor. Interesting, because Fishers was not a city all that long ago. So what was that process like for you becoming mayor of a new city?
Well, a lot of people may not know this, but I actually started as an intern for the town of Fishers.
Wow.
And have been in a variety of roles with the town leading up to becoming town manager. And then the residents of Fishers decided that they were getting large enough where they really wanted to transition into it being a city. When that occurs, you have to elect a mayor. And so I stepped into the arena of politics for the first time in my life and ran for mayor. And so I get to always be known, I guess, as the first mayor of the city of Fishers.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is it what you expected? What has life looked like versus what you thought it might be like as mayor?
The day-to-day tasks of running the town are much what I thought they would be like in terms of what I was doing before as a town manager and then being mayor. I think what has taken on more time and probably more challenge than I would have ever imagined is really more of the leadership component of trying to lead your city towards a vision, articulating what that looks like, and then really speaking on issues that I care about and I think are important to the long-term viability of our city.
Let's talk about one of those issues, which is mental health. All across the country, we have seen the need for mental health services go up. We've seen mental health be much more on everyone's radar. In Fishers, what have you seen from your population here over the last few years, especially inside of the pandemic? Has mental health been something that's been coming up more and more for your citizens?
You know, we started an initiative several years ago when I learned that, for instance, in my community in the last 20 years at this time, we'd had 3 homicides. But in that particular year, more than 13 people had taken their own lives.
Wow.
And if we compare the amount of effort and time we put into crime reduction versus what we did on mental health, there was no comparison. And so we really went through quite a extensive process to try to understand how we could mobilize our collective resources towards the issues of mental health. And I think we've made a lot of progress, but then COVID hit. And, you know, in the first several months of the COVID pandemic, we had 2 murder-suicides in our community. And so we had some immediate emergent issues with people that were now finding themselves in domestic situations where they were all cooped up in a home and those family dynamics weren't good and things were happening. But recently I read an article about the overwhelming issues with mental health that we're starting to see, because I don't think people have really processed what they've gone through, and some of that stress and some of that anxiety, and just coming to terms with what the last 2 years have looked like, what they felt, how exhausted they are. We have yet to even scratch the surface of what that's going to look like.
Yeah, there's kind of a delayed effect to it. So you're seeing that in Fishers as well.
Yeah, I think it's human nature, right? So when you're in the midst of it, you're trying to deal with the logistics. How am I going to deal with the next thing coming at me? It's when the world slows down long enough for you to just absorb what it is that you've just gone through, that I think it starts to weigh on people. And I think we're going to start to see that, and I think we're already starting to see that, and we got to be prepared for that.
I'm curious, did those incidents where you had some very public murder-suicide, one would be a very public event, 2 is certainly grabbing the attention of everyone. Did that help in any way to decrease the stigma, to make more people willing to talk about these issues openly and publicly?
I don't think at the time, just because it was right in the midst of COVID and everybody was just dealing with that issue. I think we have to be brave enough to just have an open conversation about the fact that there are people in our community, even though we're an affluent community, we're an educated community, that are struggling. And mental health is not, it is not owned by the poor. It's not owned by people that are, for some reason, have some sort of character flaw. I mean, it transcends economic boundaries, racial boundaries, and so we really need to have an open discussion about it like we would with any other health issue, and realize that if we work together collectively, we can address these issues.
You seem quite comfortable to have that conversation. Are others in Fishers joining you in it, or has that been a struggle to pull them into the conversation?
You know, I think it's been really inspiring for me over the last 5 years to have this conversation and see the response from the community. And I chalk that up to a couple things. Primarily, I chalk it up to the fact that it's relatable. And so although people weren't openly communicating about it, when I step forward or others step forward as community leaders and said, this is something we need to address, this is a problem in our community, I think they can relate it back to their mother who might be bipolar, or their daughter who's dealing with depression or anxiety, or their son who's had issues. You know, I think when people can relate it back to their own home, that motivates them and mobilizes them to step forward. And I just saw that time and time again. Every time I'd have these conversations, afterwards, someone would come up to me and say, you know, look, I'm dealing with this. I'm struggling with this. My family's dealing with this. And so it reaffirmed that this is certainly something that warrants us spending a lot of time and energy on.
You talked earlier about kind of painting a picture, casting a vision. That's part of your role as mayor. In this space, how do you do that? How do you help paint the picture of being a healthier city, a healthier community?
Twofold. One is you have to be able to deal with the emergent issues. So I want our first responders, our people, to be the most equipped and most enabled to deal with people in a mental health crisis in a compassionate and competent way. I think we've come a long ways in that regard. So when a 911 call comes in, when our people step on the scene, they're addressing that person who's in that mental health crisis as if they were someone in a mental health crisis. Beyond that, we have to create a culture in our community where people do not hesitate to go get the help they need because of a stigma or a cultural phenomenon that we have. So we need to make sure that we make this an open dialogue. Just as if you broke your arm or you hurt your leg, you're walking in and getting service because you know if you deal with it sooner, you're going to have a better outcome than if you deal with it later. I think we still got some work to do on that front, but we've come a long ways. And we'll continue to advocate to get to that ultimate vision.
I suspect one of the ways, one of the prisms you look at life through, maybe even more than being mayor, is being a father. You and I have something in common. We each have 3 sons.
Yes.
Yours are slightly younger than mine. 6, 3, and 1.
Yeah.
When you think about this world that they're inheriting, that they're living in now, I assume that is a huge motivational factor for you to make it a better place.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to teach my kids the skill sets to be resilient. And part of that is understanding and dealing with your own mental health. And then ultimately, I want to create an environment that if one of my sons happens to be struggling, that I've created an environment that's the most hospitable for him to go seek the help that they need to. And that may be me. I hope it's me. But if it's not, it's a school counselor. It's a faith leader. It's someone who is willing to be there for them in that moment. And if we can create those environments, I think we can keep a lot of bad things from happening.
You have a lot of downtime in your life, don't you?
Yeah,
Mayor
absolutely.
and 3 young kids.
It's 2 of the best jobs in the world, as you know.
I do know. Well, not the mayor part.
Yeah, but the dad part you get.
The dad part I get. Scott, thank you so much for being here. Great
Absolutely.
conversation. Thank you for what you're doing in the city of Fishers.
Thank you.
We will be right back.